Got it. So, JaiBhim, everyone, and good morning to folks in the US, and good evening to people joining from India. And this is Ambedkar Lecture Series organized by Boston Study Group. Boston Study Group is an Ambedkarite organization based in the Boston area with an aim of spreading the message of Dr. Ambedkar of the message of social justice. Uh, we are inspired by those who worked for human welfare, from Buddha and Sant Ravidas to Savitri Mai Phule and Jyotiba Phule and Ambedkar and Periyar, and many more people who came after them and took this torch of social justice forward. Ambedkar Lecture Series is our flagship program in terms of this is how we bring people who are working towards these causes in India, in US, in other places, and share their experiences with the rest of the community. So, with that, I'll introduce our today's speaker, Professor Ravikant Kisana. Professor Ravikant Kisana is based in India. Currently, he is based in Delhi and he's on a sabbatical. In the past, he has taught at many universities, including Woxin University, where many of us are familiar with in India, and Flame University, and a couple of other places. But this is he is best known for his book Meet the Savarnas, and I hope some of you have read this book. This book is an important intervention in this area of sort of exposing the caste privileges. Like we'll talk a lot about caste discrimination and about people who are, and they should be talked about and investigated and analyzed, the people who are at the receiving end of the caste system. But we don't talk so much about people who benefit from caste system, and actually the people for whom the caste system has worked really well. So much so that even despite being extremely mediocre, they have managed to capture the institution in all over South Asia, especially in India. And many of the problems we actually see in India today, whether it's human development, whether it's educational achievement, whether it's scientific technological achievements, or rather the lack of it, is does come from that kind of capture. And Professor Kisana has done a commendable job of bringing that out in his book, The Meet the Savarnas. And today's topic is very much related to that. But of course, it's also broader because beyond being a professor and an author, Professor Kisana is also a thinker. And he also is in India, so he has a much better understanding of what's going on in the ground than us sitting here. So thank you very much, Professor Kisana. And please start. And the topic today, which he has chosen, is caste elites and social dysfunction, unpacking the polycrisis in India. And the format is that Professor Kisana will take about 30, 35, 40 minutes, and then I'll ask a few questions, and then we will open it up for the audience for questions. So thank you very much again, and please go ahead.
Thank you, Arif, Haritha, and all the others from the Boston Study Group. I'm very honored to be here today. I hope my sound is clear and you can hear me properly. So, without taking too much time, JaiBhim, Namo Buddhaya, everybody, let me just try to uh, build a couple of points that I want to make, and after which, if you have some questions, like Arif said, we can discuss them a little bit. So, one of the fundamental arguments that I'm trying to build, not just in the Savarnas, but even otherwise, whatever articles or public facing work that I'm doing on social media or in any other research, is to try and locate caste as a site for understanding social dysfunction, right? So that is one of the arguments which I'm trying to build. Just give me 1 second. I'm just putting my phone in silent. I should have done this already. I'm so sorry. But what I was trying to say is that one of the arguments I'm trying to make is caste as a reproduction of social dysfunction. What I mean by that is, if you look at the knowledge production that has happened around caste, uh, most of the books, the PhDs, the sociology departments, and so on and so forth, they are often very interested in studying caste as a site of violence and exclusion, and they should do that. That is absolutely necessary. And there's a lot of oral history work, there's a lot of personal testimonies, there's a lot of modes of how violence and exclusion is sort of a result of caste organizing. What is often missed out is how caste privileges, the upper caste or Savarna caste systems, because caste is fundamentally like the exclusion is directly proportional to the privilege that accrues. So the privilege that accrues to the Savarnas is roughly, a direct result of the amount of oppression that the caste system is sort of inherently designed for. So if we are only looking at the dysfunction and sorry oppression and not the privilege part of it, then we are kind of missing the story. So I've been trying to build that argument, and one can look at it from a historical lens, and one can look at it from many different lenses. I'm very interested in my book, Meet the Savarnas, is to contemporarily explore it. So, what I'm trying to fundamentally say is, if you look at India today, and I'm sure many of you have a very, you know, ear to the ground understanding of what's happening in India. You may not be living in India, but you're sort of following the news, the social media. You're beginning to see what's actually happening. This is not like the past. And Arif was also telling me earlier that, even though people might not be living in India, they're still kind of clued in, right? It's not like you have koi idea nahi kya ho raha hai. You're very much part of what's going on. And what is going on in India right now is actually pretty scary in the sense uh, you have massive economic stagnation. Jobs are not growing. Cost of living is becoming really, really high. Large sections of the country's population, which sort of depended on public sector opportunities and jobs and things like that, those are shrinking. There is literally been no replacement for all the public sector jobs and government jobs and competitive exams, which like all these banking exams, railway exams that used to be like the safety net, and that has been shrunk, but there's been no replacement on the other side. You are seeing increasingly, even in the urban cities, even in the parts of the economy which were supposed to be doing well, like our much wanted IT sector in India, which was our great success story to the world. And that's how we sold it in the early 2000s, that look, India is, like done this and we are going to do great things in the coming century. The IT sector is stagnated. We've completely missed the AI revolution, despite having all these, like this massive workforce, which is like sort of like of engineers. We have engineering armies and institutes basically, which are churning out like tens of thousands of engineers. And yet somehow we missed the AI revolution. Now we're trying desperately to catch up. Urbanization in India has completely taken a nosedive. Indian cities are now actually unlivable. I'm right now in Delhi. Half of the year it's in a heat wave. The other half of the year, the AQI is so toxic that you like cannot sit inside your house without an air purifier, forget going out, right? And it's the same situation in some of the other cities, the traffic, overcrowding, like nothing seems to be working, right? So you're seeing a great dysfunction play out. And for those of us who are older, I'm close to 40, I'm 40 right now. Those of us who are close to 40, slightly older, slightly younger than that, you will remember this is not how we imagined India would be in 2026. Because when I was younger, when I was in college about 20 years ago, doing my undergrad and then later my MBA, the story that we were being told is India is a rising power. Okay, they said like, okay, look, we have this great demographic advantage. We have this huge, youth population which is out there. We are, we've got like a young, large population base. We have an IT sector which is developing. We have this huge domestic market, which the corporates globally, global capital can come in and capitalize, and like we are like a geostrategic balance to China. For US and EU policymakers, that was a big selling point about India. Like you can do business with us was a message. So if you're coming from the late 2000s, early 2010, the messaging you're getting is India is ascendant, right? And if you remember, like if you were in India at that point of time, like the newspapers and the editorials, and not just in India, but globally, the Economist and the Guardian, they were all writing these op-eds. Okay, oh, there's going to be an aviation revolution in India, there's going to be an urbanization revolution. Jaipur will become the next Gurgaon, and Pune will become the next Bombay, and Mysore will become the next Bangalore, and and we will have like 80 airports and this, that, and like these projections were going crazy. Like I said in the beginning, we're in 2026, none of that has actually happened. In fact, the wealth inequality has grown much bigger. It's at levels which it has never existed. And I think I was just checking this last week. About 80 crore of India's population, roughly about 55% of India's population, is on grain subsidy, on ration. Like basically, if the government stops that, you're going to have mass starvation in India, right? The kinds that we used to see in the colonial rule, where there's a bad famine, and this year monsoon's weak and 2 lakh people are dead. That's not happening because 80 crore people need this thing, right? And the Manrega, which was the minimum employment guarantee, right? The demand has only gone up, but the government has descaled it. So I can go on and on and on. I haven't even touched COVID, and I haven't even touched all of these things, and I can just talk for 2 hours about this dysfunctionality, right? But you all are probably aware of what's going on, so I don't need to go over that. But the gist of this is the Indian dream is over. I would it be fair to say that the Indian dream is over because nobody is right now in India feeling optimistic about India, right? And increasingly, it looks like globally people are not feeling optimistic about India. Indian elites are not feeling optimistic about India, and I can say this with clear empirical evidence because every time I meet rich elite Savarna people, nobody's raising their next generation in India if they can help it. They're all trying to send their kids abroad. In fact, an entire parallel education system has come up from IB schools to, your Ashoka liberal universities, where you like every year there's a mass export of students. Like so, right? I think in UK some absurd statistics. 1 in 3 overseas students in UK universities is an Indian student. And they're not coming from SC, ST, OBC. They're not coming from that 80 crore who need free grades, right? They're coming from this really tiny cohort of people who have Koti Bangla and, SUVs and all. And that hyper minority is aggressively emigrating out of India. So the signs are not good, in that sense. And I'm very interested in figuring out what went wrong here. So long story short, like without trying to, and again, I haven't even touched the surface of the most obvious things, which is like rule of law, institutional capture, what the state has been doing to religious minorities, Muslims in particular, the caste atrocities and Dalits, and taking over of Adivasi lands, and uspe I haven't even touched it. I'm just saying the parts of India which was supposed to function, the IT and this and that, like even that is not working well, right? I don't think Starbucks in India is making money. I would not be surprised if they pull out, because they can't. They probably have about 300, 400 stores in India. They will never have at this current rate that those 300, 400 stores will not become 4,000 stores. And it's not, and even those 300 stores, they're not profitable. So a city like Madurai or whatever with 30 lakh population cannot sustain 3 Starbucks. That tells you just like how low the consumption pattern or power is. That's because India has not been able to bring people out from large sections of poverty into a consumption class. So again, coming back, why has this happened? Because like I said, the script was going to be, we are going to do well, we are coming up and, we are ascending. And lo and behold, 20 years later, instead of being like this Asian ascendant superpower counterbalance to China, we can't even take care of ourselves, where electoral politics has now descended into a direct transaction between political parties and the marginalized, saying, no, no, give us welfare. We don't want promises anywhere. Just give us 2,000 rupees per month to the women or whatever. Like that's what Ladki Behna scheme and all of that is. Like the poor are losing patience, we don't want your double engine, triple engine development, Bitcoin, Fitcoin, make in India. No, no, no. Just give us money and take the vote. Like let's do it like that. So the fact that the contract has degenerated till there, and the state doesn't have money to begin with, right? This doesn't seem to be going in a happy place. So I was very interested in how this happened. And the question that I started asking myself is, see, now the usual answers for this is, one blames the political class, okay, like, oh, the politicians are, or it will be like this vague amorphous statement like a system is like this, right? So what is this system? What are its moving components, gears and springs? We don't know, but like system is like this, political class is like that. um, I have a slightly different take on this. See, the political class, the politician, especially the good politicians across parties, like by good, I mean mass leaders, right? I don't mean good in a value judgment sense. Like, I mean, like, you're a good politician if you can win your election, like you have a mass, like you can get the consensus. Politicians usually tend to be the ones who have an ear to the ground because that's their fundamental skill. So if you're going to win a constituency, it has 5 lakh votes, you know what the percentage of different caste, different religions is in that constituency. You understand instinctively which issues work well with which sections of the population. You tend to respond to that, and that's why you win or lose election. Of course, it's a lot more to it nowadays, especially with East Election Council and money and this and that. But at its very core, a politician, like even with all the money and institutional advantages or disadvantages, will win or lose election based on how well he or she can read the constituency. And they're usually good at that. What the politician is not good at, again, across political party lines, is how to execute or design policy, for which they always rely on other experts. So if you look at Modi, for instance, Modi, since his Gujarat chief minister days, like, he rules through bureaucrats. So if you see Modi's cabinets from the Gujarat CM time or even contemporary, like the ministers don't really matter. It's like who's the important bureaucrat. And again, when COVID was happening, the health minister was not doing press conferences. He was at home. It was the health ministry, the additional secretaries who are coming in every day and giving the sort of what are the details. And it was like district magistrates and SDMs at each district level. So that's why you had like, here is the Bhilwara model and here is this model, because that SDM has tried something or whatever. So India's worked out through this sort of a opaque corporate bureaucratic ruling structure. The face of it is the politician and the chief minister or whatever, but that's where it is. Second thing which has happened during the wait, there's a text here. I'm just checking if there's anything. So the second thing which has happened fundamentally is, uh, after 2000, 2005, especially, and aggressively after 2014, the corporate stakeholdership within policy making has gone significantly high. Why I'm saying all of this is because then you start looking at which caste and class of people are fundamentally behind this, right? Who gets to be in those spaces? So I'll give you one policy example because we don't have a lot of time. So I'll give you like a quick, so 5, 10 minutes, I'll talk about this and then we can have lots of questions and answers around it. See, take a policy like smart cities mission. Okay. Now, one can make an argument that when Modi comes to power in 2014, he is trying to look at he wants his whole branding is he's a man of change. So he is a forward-thinking person. So he's talking about Swachh Bharat and all of that. And these are not traditionally speaking in the political gung-ho points that a leader comes out of the gate with. But he's trying to say that, look, I'm looking about sanitation. Our cities need to be clean. Our cities need to be futuristic. Remember in 2015, 2016, considering where we are in 2026, if we actually had in India a successful, good urban renewal project, which was making Indian cities future ready, by 2025, 2026, like like it would have been like hailed as what a prophetic thing to have picked up back then, right? In 2015, 2016, we are doing it, and like we got it before things got really bad. Actually, that didn't happen. Smart cities mission was supposed to be like, okay, here are 100 cities. Why 100? Why not 10? I don't know. 100 cities. Each city will get 10,000 crores. Again, why 10,000 crore and not 20,000 crore? I don't know. 10,000 crore for one city for 5 years is nothing actually. So why they couldn't just pick 5 or 10 cities and then just put like, 50 crores or something like that, 50,000 crores or whatever. I don't know. But fundamentally, what they designed was 100 cities. Each city will get 10,000 crores over 5 years. Okay. Urban renewal. Chalo, theek hai. You take that also. When they announced this policy, they did not really specify how you will do smart cities. Like, what does that mean? Like beyond all this, oh, smart and futuristic and all that. But what does that mean? The guidelines were sort of retroactively later on sort of added on. And around 2016, 17, I was going around, I was trying to like, do more. I was in Pune, I was trying to figure out what the smart cities thing is. And I went to a couple of these conventions where the smart city commissioners or whatever ex-CEOs were there. Now, this is the other thing. If let's say you were going to decide Pune smart city, Pune is an upcoming city, we will make a smart, whatever. Here is money. Who will who will get the money? Will it go to the central government, which will spend money on Pune? Will it go to the Maharashtra government? Will it go to the Pune municipality? Actually, it goes to none of them. They created a special company called the Pune Smart City Corporation Private Limited, appointed a CEO who's a bureaucrat,
You're not doing.
and that
Maybe in the morning, I'm not going. I'll go around 3 o'clock. That's good. Yeah. That too. Member of Parliament. Oh,
may I
Can
continue?
we mute whomsoever is speaking?
Yeah, we muted you. Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So what I was saying is ki you see that, and then the money is going to be going there. And there was this smart cities convention which had happened in Delhi in 2018, I think 19, and I came to attend it. I think I was the only academic there, but it was happening in a five-star hotel, Lalit, if I'm not mistaken. And the entire lobby was full of tech companies, right? HP, Wipro, this, that. And like you go to the banquet hall and they are like these very jazzy PPTs, all these bogus words, imagineering the future, this, that. They're doing all this. And all the smart city CEOs from like, I think 50, 70, I forget now, number of cities had come there. And the agenda was like they were trying to figure out where should they spend the money. They don't know where to spend. So basically what the smart cities mission ended up doing is, this is my analysis, and somebody else could be whatever, but this is my analysis. People like companies like HP or Wipro or whatever came to the smart city missions and said, we are tech companies, we are smart. We will tell you how to make your city smart. So what is our solution? You give us 100 crores, we will build you a dashboard. In real time, you can see which traffic is coming, this, that, and all that. Or here are RFID tags, you put it on garbage bins and you can in real time track, like all sorts of bogus projects. And huge amounts of public wealth got transferred into these companies. Whether the Indian cities benefited from the smart cities project or not, you are welcome to go and check any of the 100 cities, see what actually they have done. Really did not make much of a difference. In some places, they would be like, okay, here is how many parking slots are available here and whatever, things like that they did. And in Pune, there's qualitatively also a problem because the neighborhoods are kind of picked, because I was looking at Pune closely, neighborhoods they picked, the kind of projects that they kind of picked, it was very clear that this is not coming from the idea of people who live in, low income, stressed housing, marginalized caste background. This is not coming with their idea of what the city can be. It is coming from people who live in, premium, and are doing quite well. They're coming from the idea of elites. So there was clearly a planning bias. There was clearly an execution misunderstanding, and huge amounts of wealth, money did get spent, and it went into all these tech companies and all of that. Cities, jury is still out whether they got smart or stupider. We don't know. But the fundamental point is, while all of this was happening in the world of tech globally, they were going through the deep learning revolution, all these micro, all the semiconductor and all of these different advances were happening. Uh, if you go and check, like 2015, 16, 17 is the years where there's a lot of activity that is going on in some of these big companies. It's like companies which later on, become like, all open AI and all that. Like it was quite visibly happening, and like people who work in tech will be able to tell you more, right? But in India, somehow our companies were involved in doing a lot of these different kind of projects. Now you go and check the caste composition, like where is the leadership cohort of these consultancies, of these tech companies, of these policy think tanks, of these people are coming from. So the real question I have is, yeah, it's, you should blame the political class, but then who is actually in charge of designing policy? Like Nitin Gadkari is there. He is talking about ethanol and everything, right? But he's not an ethanol scientist, right? He's a businessman. He has a factory and possibly allegedly linked to the said policy and everything. But किसी ने उसको ये policy डाल के दी है. Somebody is putting these things together, or groups of people. Where do they study? Where do they come from? Which families are they are? What's their stake in India? How do they get accrued? Like, where does privilege come from? These are questions which we do not ask, or have not even considered asking. And when you start doing that, as I have been doing for the last X many years, you start seeing a very interesting pattern come out, that within India, there is this elite Savarna urban section, right, which is constantly reproducing its eliteness through centers of higher learning, through access to policy, through access to, higher bureaucracy, judiciary, civil society, media. Like they are all like one degree cousin removed across the board. They are going abroad, they're studying abroad, working abroad, teaching abroad. Um, a lot of people in South Asia studies departments in the US, for instance, if you like, they might be very lovely people, and I'm sure many of you are, and very lovely people, very critical even. But if you start talking to them about their family, it will not be like one or two, like, degree removed, or in the same family WhatsApp group, you will find somebody who is like, a Shakha Prachalak or something like that, and or the branches of the family who are Gaurakshak and something like that. The difference between a Gaurakshak and a subaltern studies scholar is not very big. Between Haryana and Columbia University is not that big as we think it is. It is actually a very small cohort, which is in this space. So I feel that when we don't connect this dysfunction with the people who, or communities who've been in charge, then I think we are missing out a very big analysis of why India is where it is at and why it has all this polycrisis. And just to conclude, and like on a slightly, like, on a bit of a, in 30 minutes, I can just like sort of stir the pot, as you can like be, I'm sure many of you have questions. But like, the fundamental point I'll just say, like when Baba Sahib Ambedkar talks about caste and nation, one of the very interesting things he says is every caste is a nation unto itself, right? So India fundamentally is a geography where let whatever 6,000, 6,500 castes, however you count it, right? So you have 6,000, 7,000 nations which are stacked on top of each other in the same geography. And if each caste is a nation unto itself, then its policy, preferences, vision is not talking about the other 6,000 nations. It is talking about just their caste interest or nation interest, as you can say. And like castes which are stacked together, let's say closer to the top. So although there might be differences, but their interests align much better. So you can see them, there's a high degree of cooperation between different Savarna communities, although there's friction also, like so Brahmin, Banya, like I grew up in Calcutta. Calcutta has this, culture of Bhadralok, Bengali, Brahmin, Kayast, elites and all of that, very intellectual, posturing and all that. Posturing, I didn't say really, like they think they're very intellectual and everything and all that. But Calcutta also, anybody who's grown up in Calcutta will also say that Calcutta has a significant Marwadi population who've also lived there for like, 4, 5 generations now. And the Marwadi, Banya, Jain population, Khatri population of Calcutta, and the Kayast, Bengali, Brahmin, Bhadralok population, they kind of inhabit, their worlds don't match very often. In fact, Calcutta schools are different. Like Birla schools is for all the Banyas, and like you'll find like some Bengali. It's not apartheid, but like there's very clear different pathways. Their colleges are different. Banya students will go to Bhavanipur college, and the Brahmin Kais students will want to go to a presidency or a JU or something like that. So you see this sort of pattern, and there is significant friction between these communities also. And we don't study them. There's no research on this. But in a lot of matters, when it comes to, let's say, reservation or caste in Bengal, Bengal has a very high scheduled caste population, right? And when you start centering politics and discourse around scheduled caste in Bengal, then suddenly these groups sort of their interests start coming together, and then they start speaking in the same thing. Like if you start talking about Muslims in Bengal, then you suddenly see a sort of convergence between the Marwadi Khatri lobby and the Bengali Brahmin lobby. You start seeing those interests converge. So these castes, they might be separate nations unto themselves, but they sort of also cooperate like allied nations do. So in many which ways, it is these castes or these nations who have the steering wheel of the policy apparatus of India. And because we don't study their privilege and their default positions and their blind spots, we end up missing that. Because and this is the last thing I will say, I'm not essentializing by caste. And I often say this also, like I have a lot of Savarna friends, right, um, who are very eager also to understand what am I missing, right? I come from a Brahmin community, I come from a Banya community. What am I missing, right, in the way I'm looking at this? And unfortunately, like I can't even give them, or we don't even have. Here is a person XYZ who's done a PhD on Brahmin Banya social friction, because you will not find it. That has not been done. But if you go to UP, you will find somebody, many people actually, who've done PhD between the Chamar versus Pasi conflict in UP, two scheduled caste communities, right? Or in Maharashtra, Mahar and Mang, like there's friction. So you will find somebody, you'll find many, in fact, books written about this sort of friction. But I will not be able to find, these sort of Saraswat Brahmin and Konkanastha Brahmin, and like what are their, in it, unless you're from the community and you're inside it and part of their own hagiography. So we tend to end up missing all of this. And it is these communities which are realistically speaking in positions of policy and power. And I'm trying to connect this idea of why we need to study caste privilege to get an insight into policy blind spots and social dysfunction. Anyways, that's my time. I think I've wrapped up in the time Arif
Thank
allocated.
you. Thank you. Thank you. You are very, very good on time, actually. You are under time, which is rare for speakers. So thank you very much. So I'm sure people have lots of questions, and I also have few questions. So using my prerogative as the moderator, I'll start with my questions, and then we'll give opportunity to other people. So meanwhile, folks can raise their hand if they want to ask. Orally, they can ask us. They can also put in the chat. So while we are on the topic of Bengal, I mean, you grew up in Calcutta, uh, so just like a few minutes of the this kind of political upheaval going on in Bengal, and we know that at the core of it is caste. Like we're seeing, there's a whole transfer of votes which happened from almost from the left CPM CPI to RSS. So if you can elaborate a little bit, because a lot of our folks seems to be very surprised by it, which I am not kind of, but yeah, I'd like to hear from you on that, please. Thank you.
So I must say, in hindsight, one has this habit of saying, "Oh, I saw this and everything." So I will preface this by saying I did not see the scale of BJP's victory, and I did not think they were winning. I will preface this, but I will. Here's what I have to say on this. Bengal has. I've been telling this to a lot of my friends when we talk about Bengal before this election, and I used to always tell them that I said, "Look, BJP just needs to do like one or two things, which is they need to sort of signal that they are going to put a Dalit chief minister in Bengal. That's they need to, and they need to pick not a Rajbongshi, but they need to pick like a Namachudra Matua face. And in the past, they've been very good at it. They can sort of signal this is our person without saying this is our person, we'll make them. So, and in local politics, a lot of these sort of signals matter a lot. It turns out BJP didn't need to do that because I think we all fundamentally completely misread just how corrupt and nepo and unpopular Mamta's regime was. So I think there is something about that public anger, and I say this because see what has happened after the election. I know there's a tendency amongst a lot of people to be like, no, like this is election commission and SIR and definitely all of these have a role. IPAC was raided by the way. All of this definitely has a role. But see what has unfolded in Bengal after the election, right? Political parties are huge machines. When you sort of a political party is strong and sort of the result it's not, you're going to see anger on the streets, you're going to see protests, you're going to see like a pushback, right? Instead, in Bengal, the opposite has happened. Trinamool seems to be collapsing on a daily basis. Every day its leaders are like venting their frustration, like ward level leaders are going away, like the party is just like cracking open. And when you've been in power for 15 years and when you lose and you still have 40% vote share, you don't expect the party to collapse, right? That is happening because I feel that we all sort of did not, outside of Bengal, people in Bengal have been like complaining about Mamta for a long time, but outside, like even for someone like me, I was like, yeah, but ultimately it's not going to overpower that. But clearly there was a little bit of that. Bengal is still not entered the caste politics kind of a space because BJP did not really actually do that. They won this election on their institutional power, their SIR and all of that, plus Mamata regime's unpopularity. Plus, they fought a good election. They did not. They learned from the last election. You don't attack Mamata. You fuel her if you do that. This election, they did not engage her directly. Did not fuel the fire. They ran a steady, dedicated election campaign in the middle of like all of India is paying the price for it. Like they like waited for all of that. So I think there is a lot to look there, and Bengal we will become things will become clearer in another 6 7 months. We have to actually see. It's such a big political change that we actually don't know what fundamentally happened here. But yeah, this is not the caste like votes have shifted, but whether they've shifted because of caste or something else, that we don't know yet. Votes have definitely shifted in Bengal.
Thank you for your take. One thing I really wanted to have a separate discussion on your book, but I would like to bring some of the important points which you have made in the book. So one thing which actually you referred to a little bit in the discussion in your thoughts about this urban renewal or the smart city project, and who is bringing in what skills and kind of knowledge which is relevant to Indian cities, and not to New York, not to London, but the Punes and the Patnas we have, and the question of knowledge. And in the Indian context, we know that there is a certain caste which claims to have a monopoly over knowledge production, and no points for guessing that caste is Brahmins or Brahmins as we call them. But in your book, you say that Brahmins actually don't produce knowledge; they perform knowledge. So I would really like you to elaborate a little bit on that, as producers of knowledge, and like Brahmins as performers of knowledge rather than producers of knowledge. Thank you.
So I fundamentally feel that again, this is my analysis, and like somebody is welcome to agree or disagree. As a culture studies person, when one looks at the historical role that Brahmins have played, right? They are validators of the social order, right? So if a king is like, from like a new ruling dynasty has come in, they need to be validated, like, yeah, XYZ. So how do you validate? Through priestly rituals and figuring out lineages and something like somewhere you have to figure that thing out. So they are not really producing knowledge. They are validators of the social order, right? And the why should anybody listen to a person who will validate important social order issues? Because they perform the knowledge the best. If you don't look like somebody that who's an expert, why will I listen to you? You're not a productive, you're not doing artisanal labor, you're not actually going and doing military adventures, you're like the priestly validating class. So for me to take you seriously, there has to be lore, there has to be an anthropology of building the performance and performing it and all of that. So I think a lot of anthropological performance of what they're doing is in Brahminism focuses more on whether you can perform, whether you look like it or whether you perform it, rather than actual sort of what the role is. Now, when you transfer that to modernity, right? And when you transfer that to something like academia, or whether you transfer something to like policy building, do you look like you have the pedigree to be a policy expert? Or which college have you come from is way more important than what you're actually saying. And we see this in social sciences and natural sciences all the time. Like in India, like the first thing that you will get asked is like, and I was told this when I used to work in Flame back in the day. I had this discussion with this colleague. He was Brahmin. We had like a long over coffee. We were talking, and he really enjoyed the conversation. He's like, "Oh, like you clearly are very sharp. Why have I never heard of you? Like before." And he said it in a way which was like surprise and also accusation. Like, why have I not heard of you? What he meant fundamentally was, in those circles, right? I am not there. So because I'm not there, I'm not legitimate in a certain way. It doesn't matter how sharp, good, smart, and all of those things I am. So knowledge that I'm producing is okay, is important and welcome, but I need to perform the knowledge, and I don't perform the knowledge, right? So even now, as a writer and as a professor, I actively subvert the stereotypes around this, because I don't want to be consumed by Savarna society in that way. Because that's the whole idea. Like, okay, you have written this book. Now, for the intellectual performance of it, you have to be like this and talk like this and present yourself like that and XYZ. And then the focus becomes on oh, I can't take you seriously because you don't perform the knowledge as well. But that eccentricity is quite acceptable when they will talk about Western scholars, for instance. Then it is quite fine. But within this, and it goes back to caste hierarchy, right? Like how do you keep ordering? So one important idea of ordering is always figuring out somebody's performance, figuring out somebody's pedigree, right? If you went to Doon School, if you went to Stephens, right? And I'll just quickly wrap this answer up because by saying this, you can check this. You can go to the Wikipedia page of St. Stephens. I often say this. And just check the St. Stephens alumni page. And it will be like 4 pages of who's who, from heads of state to cabinet ministers to, Pranoy Roy types and all of those people, right? Delhi University, Delhi has 50 other colleges. What is there in the water of Stephens or pedagogy of Stephens that so many great people are coming out? What are they teaching there, which is so fantastic? And if it is so fantastic, why have we not reproduced it in other colleges of Delhi? Forget anywhere else. Chances are these people would have ended up becoming really successful anyways. Stephens is the conduit through which they all go, right? So Stephens, in that sense, I don't want to make a controversial statement and call Stephens bad, but I'm just saying the knowledge performance of that Stephenian tag is way more actually important in some of these people's cases than actually being really good. Something that I went to college and I learned and I'm like, okay, now I will, my life. That's not what happened. These people went through that. And if you're not coming from a place like that, which is known for that, then you will not get that XYZ. That's what I meant. It's a knowledge, performance, and production difference.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Just one more question from me. So this whole idea of what is in the West, especially known as DEI, right? The diversity, equity, inclusion, and we are all for it. But when it comes to Savarnas, right? So, like we look at, as you also sort of referred to, like we look at the South Asia institutes and India centers in US, in Europe, in other places. They're almost, I would say, I would go to the I would say more than 95%. Like I mean, we live in. I live in Cambridge, and we have MIT, Harvard, and bunch of other universities and colleges in the area, and it's the same, right? And these people are all for it. But when Mandal Commission recommendations were implemented in India, the resistance did not just come from RSS, the resistance also came from JNU faculty. Okay, the JNU faculty, imagine that. And these are the most privileged people, supposedly very pro social justice and all those things in their talk. So how do you look at it, this phenomena, what I call, so when they come here, they claim deprivation. I call it Shyamla Harris, Gayatri Chakravarti phenomena, that when these people came to US, I mean, most of the Indians did not even know how to get a passport. But when they came here, whether it was Gayatri Chakravarti or Shyamla Harris, Kamala Harris's mother, they all claimed that they come from deprived section, disadvantaged section, and that's how they build their privilege here. And that process is still going on in academia, in non-profit, everywhere you look at it. But then how did they, I mean, in your view, how did they manage to pull this con off like so easily? Like, especially now when it's so easy to see what is happening, what's going on, so much more communication. Yeah. Thank you.
So I don't think that the JNU professors who were opposing the Mandal Commission and the RSS is different. In my estimation, I don't think they're different. They are, like I said, and Baba Sahib has said this before also, like they are different arms of the same body. And it is a very, they act in their own caste interest. So for me, this is not surprising in the least, right? Now, if you look at this important thing that you're saying about DEI and how it is operating, India has currently, I think, 450, almost 500 private universities now. Okay, more are getting added. It's about 45, 46% of universities in India today, right? In 2006, this number was share of private universities in India's higher education was, I think, 10-12%. In 20 years, number of private universities in India, its share in higher education has gone from 10-12% to almost half of it. Why this has happened? What happened in 2006? That suddenly after that, every Savarna billionaire and Ambani, Adani, Mahindra, Munjal, Goenka, everybody has opened a university. Maybe they all have national interest in their heart. But why national interest only got triggered after 2006-07? Why not before that? Could it have something to do with the fact in 2006 OBC reservation in education admission was implemented? Fundamentally, ensuring that the class composition now will be half and half. SC, ST, OBC will be 50%, right? And after that, you immediately see in India an explosion of international curriculum schools, and the prices have gone through the roof of schooling in India, right? These private universities. I don't think any private university in India has reservations. Okay? They all put out on paper saying something like, we will give need-based scholarship. Each university in India, the process is you have to do an act of legislation. That's how you make a university, right? It can be, in my opinion, it can be legally argued that they're going against the spirit of their own act. Because they have to give some sort of an inclusion affirmation. They are choosing to give it on need-based, as in whatever, and not caste-based, right? So if you now go and check the top premium colleges in India, universities in India, especially in the humanities and social sciences, who, by the way, exclusively are hiring PhDs who have come from the US, UK, right? So in the last 20 years, a lot of people have gone to the US or UK or whatever, Europe, done their PhDs in social sciences, come back to India and taken jobs. Ask them, is there caste-based reservation in hiring and admission in those universities? There isn't. So fundamentally, what we are talking about is a structural pipeline of caste-based exclusion. Also, by the way, caste-based, critical caste scholars like myself don't have a place in that ecosystem. We are on the outside of it. And if you assert too much, go on social media and talk too much, I have fundamentally I think I am blacklisted from premium Indian universities, mainly because I've gone in social media and talked about exactly this very often, right? So you have created this sort of a system where the people who talk most critically are actually reproducing this huge social inequality, right? And even if somebody says, one more thing I'll quickly add, if somebody says, well, what can I do as an individual professor, the university policy, fine, great, individual versus institutional. Show me your CV, show me your publication list. If you've had an academic career for 15, 20 years, right? I'm not talking about assistant professors. I'm saying, let's say you're a little bit older. In 15, 20 years, how many SC, ST, OBC students have you published with? If you've had 8 or 10 PhD students, scholars who've done your PhD under you, how many of them were from SC, ST, OBC community? And then I would like to ask them also, if someone says, I have here is one SC student who was my PhD scholar, now is completed her PhD or whatever, I want to ask her, when you were doing the PhD, what was your experience like? Was it a dignified experience, right? If you start doing this audit on most of our so-called progressive academics, who speak and write beautifully, by the way, right? I am pretty sure we will have some very embarrassing results, right? And you're very right about this section. They all went to the US and claimed marginality. I think till 1967, if I'm not wrong, passport was not a right in India, right? And, these people all went abroad. So they have been, again, this is what I mean by the anthropology of knowledge performance. right? If you are historically trying to always adapt to different social settings, upheavals, political changes, regimes, and things of that nature, you tend to, like, individually and collectively, generationally, sort of learn to read the lay of the land, figure out what works, what doesn't work. By claiming yourself marginalized is an excellent move in academia of the 1980s in the context of US, because that's a very useful tool to kind of push back against like white supremacy or like white domination, white hegemony in academic departments. And you're basically taking this tone, building on the work done by Black scholars and activists who have been challenging white power, and then you insert yourself in that discourse by saying, look, we are also people of color, POC and XYZ. But then in your own domestic context, with respect to your own national, regional thing, you have acted in ways which are way more exclusionary than the kind of whatever that was there. So that's how it flows, I think.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We'll open for audience questions. We also invite comment. The only condition is that it should be all within a minute. So please, Mr. Naveen Narayan, he has raised his hand. So please unmute Mr. Narayan and please keep your comment or question brief. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Are you able to listen me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes.
I think video is not still off. Yeah, video. Yeah. Anyway,
Don't worry. Go ahead.
okay. I think I do agree with your point, because I also from the Marwad area, because I live in the Jaipur. So I do understand. So I'm very thankful after listening your point, as well as RF's point, what happened in the JNU. I also studied in the JNU during that. After that, so my question to you now. In the 2001 Durban conference happened. So we were asking that the UN, you also address the casteism. Or I worked with an international organization more than 20 years after studying social work and MPhil PhD from GNU. And during that period, I still face lots of problem, because I was asking who is the taking decision, who are the sufferer, who are the supremacists. And we have to put all money to that addressing the poverty, exclusion, discrimination, the marginalization issues. So even they are not agree. So that I think now that what is happening, the FCR is on, the organization is Action Aid International. Everyone knows about the Action Aid International. So I am absolutely out of that. Anyway, so I'm trying my hard to pop up that issues when I come from the public health background. So I also did some research that is published in that Brandeis University in culturalizing casteism healthcare in India. The same thing I also want to address in the social sector. But the big problem, that's I want to some idea from you, Ravikant and Arif both, you can give me how I can identify their social identity factually. Because personally, I know them, their surname and so on, but the factual data doesn't available. Even the UN, INGOs and embassies and all that CSR decision makers like that. So can you give me some idea? And definitely, I'll definitely come. And the second point of I'm next week I'm coming to Delhi, and definitely if you provide me some contact address, definitely I'll come to meet you. Because in the Rajasthan, because I'm from the Rajasthan, तो राजस्थान में मारवाड़ी जो बोलते हैं, आप समझते हैं, तो उनके भीतर differentiation I also identified Khandelwal, Maheshwari, Agrawal and Guptas. So they are also facing the same problem. Even the Jain, whether they are Digambar, whether the Swetambar, I use this as a technique to push them out as a personal front. But definitely this is also highlight. So my question, how I can take it further in the social sector. That's my question. Thanks a lot once again. I'm sorry I've taken much time. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Please.
I'm not very sure how helpful my response can be to this, because in terms of research and factual data collection, it depends a lot on what the local ethical research data collection standards are, right? In India, if you're doing exercises like this, then it's actually pretty lax, which is not good actually, but nobody really looks into this very. Also, it doesn't really, it's not a legal challenge. And at least I don't know of a single case where somebody has created legal complication by saying ki my data was used without my consent for some research or something like that. But I think there are some people who are doing research in the US. I know some PhD and young scholars now who are looking into, caste groups, South Asia groups, the kind of events they're happening, lists coming from there. But a lot of it is qualitative research. So I don't know how that will sort of, and fundamentally in their output, they have to sort of remove identifying markers. For a lot of qualifying qualitative data, you have to kind of change the names and details a little bit while you're writing it so that nobody is visibly identified. But your project, the idea is the opposite. You want that to be identified. I think that will be a little bit of a challenge. So I'm sorry, I don't have a more direct answer about it. The second part of your question, I didn't really fully understand, which is about differences between different sort of Banya communities. And you're very right. Like this idea between like Khandelwas and Maheshwaris, and there's a actually, I'm very fascinated with Banya Samaj. Like a lot of my so-called Savarna research is looking at Banya communities, especially in Rajasthan and Gujarat. So, all of these communities, they have these network of like, Maheshwari Samaj and this, that, they'll have these different um matlab, gurus coming, like Jains especially, they do that. Their gurus will come like from city to city, who's hosting the, like, some cousin ke ghar pe, he will come, guru will come, and then all the young people are sent. The way they initiate young people, there are organizations which are only working with that. Like I think there's something called Jito, Jain International. I don't know if I could be wrong, where like they take young Jain kids and they send them abroad to, like, where there is also a Jain organization, a hostel, and they're given like PowerPoint presentations about like how modernity and like how Jainism is relevant in that. So there's like a very interesting world of all of these mobilizations, which again is outside of academic documentation. So when you speak to, Banyas, like they all have these experience, they all know of these different how samaj and institutions, but very little work has happened on documenting them and kya actually hota hai and what are the practices and how do people actually feel about it, how effective they are, we don't know. So it's very interesting, actually. There's a whole body of work which has not yet happened. So let's hope we see more of that.
Just to add to what Professor Kisana was saying, is that's why caste census is very important, right? Like not just in terms of knowing the names and stuff, but of course in the name in terms of knowing the privileges. So we know a lot about the discrimination and the disadvantages which happens because of caste, but there are certain segment who takes a lot of advantage and has privilege because of caste. So not only that, so the caste census, which is basically going to be a socioeconomic, has to be a socioeconomic caste census, otherwise it doesn't have any meaning. That who owns so much resources, and beyond that, we have like at the last count, I think Professor Teltumbre has mentioned there are more than 30,000 caste surnames. So from area to area, the same caste, same subcaste will have different names, but to have a proper caste census, we also solve that problem because that's going to document all the caste names, not standardized, but at least put in a category and subcaste. So that's very important. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Venkat Maroju, please go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you, Arif, and thank you, Dr. Ravikant Kisana, for a wonderful lecture. So, yeah, I mean, you talked about, some of the necessity of research on, beyond these caste atrocities and, on the sociological perspective and economic perspective, but more on the higher order, I don't know, day-to-day economic. I mean, what is happening? We are missing out while we are struggling day-to-day lives. Of course, I mean that is the struggle for a lot of people. The country is, whether good or bad, we accumulate a lot of wealth in the post-economic liberalization. And the question is, what is the share of SC, ST, OBC minorities is very negligible in this new economy. While India produced, top four of the richest people in the world, at the bottom we have, more than 300 million people cannot afford 2 meals a day, and we cannot literate all of our, make 100% literacy with all the wealth we created. Still, we have, hovering around 75% literacy when these are given by government numbers, right? So that's a very important topic to probe. Kabir, couple of things here, right? Yeah. So it's a completely, if you take any large IT companies, any large new economy, take uh, mining to airport to real estate. It's completely monopolized again. It's a new form of what do you call? Sorry, I gotta. Uh, feudalism reproduced in the urban centers as well as the new economy. This is my question, and some of the things, right? With all the, I mean, I cannot say the country, they have to leave this pressure valve of doing certain things. Otherwise, if it's completely no progress, yes, there will be some sort of revolt and all that, right? So just put some positive things that I've observed as a nation, right, on the technology, new economy. Some of these digital public infrastructure, right, such as UPI, Aadhaar. I mean, it is actually, I work in tech, I work in, large scale projects, country nation population size projects in agriculture and all that. And sometimes it amazes me. I think some of these things that our government could do, when irrespective of course, Aadhaar was started with the UPA government, and it was only succession that BJP, but even UPI took several years of work. But so just to throw some light, what kind of these um, s- some of these successes have on the marginalized sections in a positive way, if you can throw some light, because there is some positive movement there. Anything, if at all, anything. Of course, I mean, people could argue you have more control, more, that's another, we don't need to go there. But just to look at the positive side of things, if you, in your observation. So can you please throw some light on that, please? You're muted, Doctor.
Thank you for your question and comment. I'm going to give you my perspective, and
Yeah, please. Yeah,
you may not like it,
yeah,
but I will just say this. I don't like this idea that no, let's take something positive out of it.
yeah,
Because for me, the whole point is this. Yes, UPI
yeah,
is great and everything. Uh, we are currently in the middle of a point in India
yeah.
where uh, the most basic bricks, DNA, ABC of a
Mm-hmm.
civilized society have fallen
Mm-hmm.
apart. Okay,
Oh,
from
sorry.
law and order to institution to food security to education to healthcare to basic consumption to public security to the basic democratic processes and rights of a citizen have all fallen apart. The air we breathe, the water we drink, we can no
Yeah,
longer take for granted. In the middle of this, it's like a house is burning and we are taking a pause and saying, but this table is really nice. Like for me it becomes like that. Okay, yeah, the table is nice, that's great, but the point is, and the reason why I say this is what I feel, and I've written this in my book also. I think there will come a moment in India soon, at the way things are going and all this cockroach Janata Party and all,
Yeah.
where Indians will, across even Savarnas, even elite Savarnas, will suddenly stop and say, "Okay, enough of this positive reflection. We went wrong somewhere. Let's figure out where we are." When things get messed up, when in our personal life some disaster happens, what do? We sit down, we reflect. What could we have done differently? What lesson can we take out of this? Where did we make a mistake? Those exercises cannot begin if every conversation we start by saying, okay, but let's look at the positive. And this right now in 2026, when even as recent as 2023, when I started writing this book, my friends and my people were saying, "Okay, why are you so negative in this book?" Because people were still talking $5 trillion economy, this, that. How quickly in 3 years' time, now we've reached a point where nobody is stopping you and saying, "Ki, no, no, actually, no, let's, kuch acha bhi hua hai." That's not what is happening. So I feel the momentum of social inquiry, I think it is a difficult conversation. It is not easy and it is not nice to think like this also, but it is necessary. We all have to make the difficult decision to start by saying, okay, let us please accept that fundamentally India is in a position of crisis. And yes, we got some things right. No, nobody's denying that. Some things are right, great. But large sections, a core, like I said, the ABCD, the DNA things seem to be falling apart. Right now in India, I'm sure if you're following the news, this month, in the last 2, 3 weeks, we are not able to conduct NEET and CBSE exams.
I know, man. Very, very.
Things like CBSE exams, which
I
are
know.
like, which is open and shut, which we know can do it, have been
Correct.
happening forever. Things like that have got messed up, and they are saying, let us get the Indian Air Force to deliver neat question paper to ensure that it doesn't leak. So we've reached a point where we can't even deliver exams which we've been doing successfully all these years. So
Yeah, yeah.
things which were working are falling apart, right?
When there was
So
no communication, when there was no technology, we could do it.
we could
Yeah,
do it
right. Yeah, when there was no
because,
technology, there was no easy way
yes,
to
Venkat, and
catch.
here's my
Yeah,
point. We could,
I know.
it's not because suddenly there is a big crisis. No, it's the fact that if you do the forensic analysis of what is happening with the CBSE, as many people are doing online, still a developing story. It is because they have pushed through some digitization. They haven't done adequate preparation. This idea of paying attention to detail planning, just the thing like I was telling about the smart cities thing. They announced it, and then you decide what the details will be. There is no concept of you know let's sit, let's do it well, but do it slowly. Here is, we have this idea, just push it through, right? It again is a very knowledge performing motivation. It's not a knowledge excellence motivation. And that's my point. So I think we need to have a very sober reflection. Now people are saying, oh, Indians are going abroad and facing, tourists are getting all these bad reactions. People need to think a little bit, like where we are going wrong. Anyways, like I think
Okay.
that's a long
Thank
answer.
you. Thank you. So I have a few questions on chat. I've been sent, so I'm going to ask those questions. So there's a question from, can you hear me? Huh? Yeah. So the question is from Pranav. The question is, quote, when debating with general category classmates on reservation, they seem to not acknowledge that there aren't enough seats for students in India in general and think the scarcity itself is some sort of necessity. Why do you think that education is something to be fought for instead of as a fundamental right? Unquote.
But we don't think that. They think like that. See, my Pranav, my personal policy on debating reservation with Savarnas who are anti-reservation. My simple advice always is, don't do it. Don't do it. Because this is one of those things, and I have many Savarna friends who understand what reservations are. It is not so difficult. It does not require a debate. It does not require a huge body of knowledge. If you want to understand it, you will get it. It is a very simple logical conception. What they don't understand is not reservation. What they don't understand is that their own casteism. This idea that, in this country, we have these stupid competitive exams, where this NEET, they think about it, 22 lakh people are fighting to become doctor in a country which has a shortage of doctors. If you have 22 lakh young people of the country wanting to become doctors, you should celebrate as a nation and try to make all of them doctors. Why are we forcing them? Like, no, only 10,000 of you will get the best knowledge, or rest, why are we doing that? We don't have an oversupply of engineers and doctors and things like that, or lawyers. So this entrance exams is a fundamentally a class/caste filtering mechanism. Anybody who defends it, I would say, is not thinking in the best interest of India. Forget, because they will just keep saying stupid things like merit, merit. But how will you, like, if you don't broad base your population base, right? Merit ka kya matlab hota hai? If you are already a brilliant student when you come to an engineering college or a medical college, right? Then what's the role of IIT? Why is IIT then great? You're already somebody who is very brilliant. IIT is great, or IIM is great, or a medical college or a law college is great when it takes a student who's come from very humble background and makes them, really qualified and skilled. That's the job. That's the literal job, right? If somebody does not understand that, don't argue with them. You will burn out, right? And any reservation debate which has political or legal implications, community is there on ground. They will handle that in court and through vote. So debating it over coffee is pointless.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, another question. This is from Kavya, quote. Dr. Kisana, thank you for your analysis. I wanted to ask you how you see caste functioning with the boom of educational consultancies and the education migration of Indian students, especially to countries like Canada, given how these consultancies also exploit the dominant caste students.
Thank you for this question, Kavya. This is one of my, I shouldn't say favorite, but one of my big preoccupations. I want to share with this group. I think 1 year ago, 1.5 years ago, I actually bought this book. It was available in some bookstore, which said essays which get you into Ivy League or something like that. What the publisher had done was had taken these students from top IB schools, international schools in India, and the SOP essay they had written with which they got admission into the US. So it is like name of student, name of the school, and which college they got admission into, and the essay. I went page after page and I read those essays. My God, my God. The way these people write, like I am coming from third world and my country and ecological crisis, what all they are writing. Then I look deeper into it. There are these consultancies who have ready packages. I've had students come up to me in the university, upper caste students, who are saying, can you write me a letter of recommendation? I said, okay, I generally never say no to students. Why should I hamper somebody's academic journey is my mindset. So if you ask and I've taught you, I'll try to help you. So then they say, okay, you write the letter and send it to me. I said, why will I send it to you? The process is you apply to, let's say, Cornell University, and then Cornell will send me an email and I will upload it to Cornell. No, you send it to me. I will send it to my consultant, and then consultant will say what to change and what not to change, and then you do it. And I'm like, one rapta I will give you. Like, why is a consultant coming in this middle of the contract? SOP students have stopped writing, right? These are students from elite universities, English medium, three intergenerational. Like grandfather was speaking English. They speak very well. They're not writing SOP. Why? SOP will write, consultancy will write. They don't even want to make that much effort. It is a huge cottage industry which has boomed. And actually, this is corruption on, overseas universities also. They are actually devaluing their admission process. And this works actually for master's students or bachelor students. This doesn't work for PhD students. Basically, if you're a bachelor or master, undergrad student, or like in the US, it's undergrad and graduate, right? If you're an undergraduate student, or in the UK, if you're doing for a BA or whatever, or a MA, you are bringing your own money. So each student is bringing in about 1 crore rupees per year, right? That's the cost of, I think, Columbia or whatever, 70, 80 lakh rupees. They will give maybe a 5, 10 lakh rupee write-off. So you're still bringing 60, 65 lakh rupees, 70 lakh rupees per year in tuition fees, and then whatever else you expect. So to get that money, these universities are also admitting these students. So it is actually, it is an absolute shameful uh, practice across the board. Students who have the wealth, who have access, who have all the cultural capital, who have the best education, English medium and XYZ, they are the ones who are using these things. And every day I'm meeting like SC/ST students, OBC students, or coming from regional medium, first generation learner, who actually need maybe these sort of helps. They are not getting it. So it is an absolutely terrible thing. And it also shows you once again what I'm saying, this idea of knowledge performance instead of knowledge production. Right. I don't even need to write my own SOP only. Somebody else will write it, as long as it's sort of, and the package is ready. These consultancies, they have a tie-up. They have an NGO tie-up. NGO will give you a letter saying, oh my God, you saved the environment. You worked with us for 2 months. They'll have a package with some sports organization. They'll have a package with somebody else. So you pay this consulting like firm 15 lakhs rupees or whatever, and they will create a customized application packet for you, and they'll write your SOP and they'll send you abroad. It is absolute corruption, actually. I'm not sure how they exploit dominant caste students. I don't think the students who are paying 15 lakh rupees for this are getting exploited, right? They might complain that, oh my God, after 15 lakh rupees, I had to still write my own SOP, but that's not exploitation. It's not the word I would use for it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Deepthi, you can unmute. Deepthi Bhattini, you can unmute and ask a question, please.
Yeah, hi Ravikant. So I want to ask you two questions. So one is that now OBCs have just entered the political chat room of India, and now everyone is talking about OBCs being the largest number, but the discourse is not going beyond the numbers, you know. And I have been speaking at a few OBC platforms and meetings. Even the questions from OBCs are not going beyond the numbers, you know. And for in terms of SEs, it happened so that organize and agitate happened. But in the case of OBCs, it looks like we are still at the stage of educate, and also it is at a very low level. And in this uh, scenario, even if the political power is given to OBC, like Siddaramaya, he is not even able to do anything because the system is not made for or by the OBCs, right? It is the bureaucracy, the judiciary, everybody, everything else is dominated by OC. So how do you think the OBC should navigate this?
Okay, that's an excellent question, Deepthi. I absolutely agree with you. As in OBC myself, I feel one of the big problems is there are two quick answers to this. I can talk on it for hours, but I'll give 2 quick points on this. Number one is the reason why the OBC discussion never goes beyond number is because all these castes which are put into the OBC category, apart from saying we have 54% number, there is not much common between them. That is number one. Number two, and if you go state by state in different regions, very often, if there are 7 OBC communities on ground in the village and in the town, they are often conflicting with each other, because their immediate social interest is against each other, or they're fighting for the same resources. So you cannot actually go on ground and try to bring these communities and say, oh, you're OBC, I'm OBC, let's work together as OBCs. That OBC is a constitutional term. It doesn't have a sociological, cultural base. The effort, if you see in OBC politics in India, has been regional caste-based coalitions. So there'll be a Yadav-led Samajwadi thing in North India. There'll be a Jat formation. There'll be a Maratha Kunbi formation, XYZ, Idava formation in Kerala. So, but the moment you try to go from Yadav to, let's say, Maurya or whatever, then it starts Rajbhar. Then it starts breaking apart, right? I think the only serious effort in this has been done by Kanchiram Sahib and the BSP, and in its peak. And I think what they were able to do was tell all these different communities and give them a very radical imagination, right? Which brings me to the second point of OBC crisis is even the few regional parties and mass leaders we end up creating, nobody actually has a daring imagination. Nobody actually has a broad vision consciousness. What I mean by that is, just look at something like a state like UP, where Yadavs were like, in power for a while. Okay, Samajwadi was quite dominant in the 90s. And like, Akhilesh was CM till 2017, right? After Mayawati, Benji Mayawati, he was CM till 2017. Show me the intellectual class of Yadavs, right? Show me, the intellectual class coming from Marathas and Kunbis, right? Jats, Gujars, right? If you see Gujars are like, driving around, and I'm from the Gujar, like my father is from the Gujar community. Like you see Gujars in NCR, they're driving around Thar and they're like, yes, we are so powerful. What power are you talking about? Right? You have zero cultural representation. Basically, OBC communities, what is your power? You get like some MLA elected in some 5-6 seats, but those MLAs, like, Deepti is saying, cannot actually do much, right? Because they are beholden to the party system, because you don't have a vision for your own community, right? So only thing the OBC, the slightly landed pockets where OBCs have land and all that, the only thing you can do is you will have some feudal power, and then you will put that violence on scheduled castes below you, right? So usi mein khush hai ki, like, I'm happy that I can dominate this group. And if you see the scheduled caste imagination, the Ambedkarite imagination, right? Like Ambedkarite movement, I don't mind saying this, is a scheduled caste led movement. We have to accept it because they have shown the vision and the path and the daring, right? And when you compare that vision to the OBC community, it is shockingly, it exposes actually. And OBCs, many OBCs, I shouldn't say all, many OBCs don't want to work under scheduled caste leadership. Their inherent casteism comes under. They will work under, Savarna parties, not get anything, be foot soldiers. They are accepting that, but they don't want to work under scheduled caste leadership and, annihilation of caste vision, which is a crisis of India actually. So there is, and there is no leadership also. You don't see any thinkers, intellectuals, writers, or political leaders who are talking about, from OBCs, who are talking about annihilation of caste. And that exposes a very big problem. So that is a very big issue of OBC politics in India. They have proven to be till this point in history, they have proven to be unreliable in the anti-caste ideological.
Sure. Thank you. So if you could just stay for 5 more minutes, Professor Kisana, I have to take a last question and then we'll close. So Praveen, please go ahead quickly. Yeah. Praveen, are you there? You can unmute yourself.
Hey.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I wasn't able to unmute. So my quick question is about this theory of pragmatism, and from John Dewey, and I think who was one of the mentors of Baba Sahib also. So this actually was a conversation that happened in like one of the Savan chat room talks. So they were saying like, they were reflecting on the 60 or 70 years of India's democracy and saying that probably all the ideals that are mentioned in the preamble or in the constitution have no value as long as we have like all these colonial structures in place. So, and I mean, they mention was also about, I think the talk actually came from Baba Sahib's text on Pakistan or partition of India. And their viewpoint was like his entire viewpoint was a very pragmatic viewpoint, which comes from how the US itself is actually run. It's more pragmatic than actually relying on the true values. So I just wanted to hear your thoughts about like where are the fault lines here? Is it whom are to blame uh, when things are falling apart in the Indian democracy right now? Is it actually that the colonial structures are to be blamed? Or do you think like it's the capture of the colonial structure by the Savarn caste, which is uh, uh, to be blamed here?
Oh, I think the crisis of India is like I was saying in my talk also in my book also. I think it's see, blaming colonial structures is a very odd gambit in my opinion. Because if you're going to say colonial structures are a problem, pre-colonial past is even a bigger disaster for oppressed caste communities, for scheduled caste communities. It was not our golden era, in that sense. In many which ways, the colonial intervention, no matter how brutal and exploitative it was, created pathways for us which did not exist before that. So that's point number one. Crisis of India is not, I don't think, in colonial institutions. Crisis of in India is, take a colonial institution like the British, like the court system that we have. It is a very, extension of a colonial system. Look at the crisis of the higher judiciary. I don't need to tell you, everyone here, if you're listening to talks like this, I'm sure you know about the caste composition of our higher judiciary. So, is that a problem of the institution or the people who are refusing to reform it? Right? Now, I don't think that the court framework or I don't think that all these chief justices and senior advocates are saying, we want to change, but Supreme Court is not allowing us. And I don't think that's what's happening. They have fundamentally found a way of keeping the steering wheel of power, despite being a hyper minority in demographic terms. That is the big problem in India. So, problem is not institutions, problem is gatekeeping access. See, here's something, if you're SC/ST OBC communities, here is the only thing we need. Just remove this artificial scarcity. If you just open the door fully, there's so many of us that we will sweep everything. We will get in, right? They know this, which is why every policy intervention from education to healthcare to all of these institutions has always been artificial. Gate can open this much, but they will keep it till here. Whole effort goes in just keeping it till this small. Newer and newer ways of, like I said earlier, what is your pedigree, what is your this, what is newer and newer ways will be invented to keep the door closed small, right? That creates a massive dysfunction, because what that means is by 2026 you are getting a third, fourth generation Savarna who was born into a system where the gate was so small, lived there, now is reporting, and they actually don't have an imagination of what the same systems can be when you fling the door open and let everyone in. So I think that's where the dysfunctionality really takes root, right? So they've built one great connection to this is, I can immediately look at the housing societies they've created in Gurgaon. They can control their housing society. It is fantastic. But everything outside the housing society is completely dysfunctional, which means their own housing society is also dysfunctional. So it doesn't even work for them. So now they are getting very upset and what is the crisis of India and everything. So, and the idea of pragmatism and everything, yeah, well, John Dewey and pragmatism and all that, okay, but Baba Sahib also had a very strong Buddhist strain. we tend to overlook that, and there is a certain kind of Dhamma pragmatism which comes from Buddhism also. So there are Buddhist scholars who can do more, expound on it, on this debate more actually. But there are ways of looking at this, I would say. Like I won't blame it on colonial structures alone.
Thank you, Professor Kisana, also for staying a little longer. So before we say thanks to Professor Kisana and close this, so this is the, I don't know if you can see it. Okay, so the book is called Meet the Savarnas, Indian Millennials Whose Mediocrity Broke Everything. So please look it up on Amazon. It's available on multiple platforms. There's also, yes, thank you very much. Yes, so there is also Kindle version, everything. So do read it. A lot more. If you are impressed by what Professor Kisana shared with us here, you will be even more impressed when you read the book. And with that, so thank you very much, Professor Kisana, for taking this time out. And we're looking forward to such conversations in future as well. And this recording will be available in a bit on the Boston Study Group YouTube channel. So you can share with other people and folks who are joined. If they have not subscribed, please subscribe to the YouTube channel and also our email list, so you can be informed of such conversations, our ALS series in future. So thank you again, Professor Kisana, and all the very best from your side, and keep fighting the good fight. So JaiBhim.
Thank you, Arif.